So up to the Middle East now. New reports say Iran is offering to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, but without a nuclear agreement. Bryan Llenas live in Tel Aviv with how that deal is resonating. Bryan.
Bryan, good morning. Well, direct negotiations have stalled between the U.S. and Iran as both sides insist that they hold the cards to end this war on their terms. Iran's foreign minister is currently right now in Russia after visiting Oman and Pakistan twice over the weekend to discuss the war. Iran's latest proposal to the U.S. demands that the U.S. essentially lift its blockade of ships to Iranian ports. In exchange, Iran will reopen the Strait of Hormuz to international shipping. Only then, Iran says, would it later negotiate with the U.S. about its nuclear program.
Developments have occurred in the negotiations. The Americans' approaches caused the previous round of talks, despite the progress that had been made, not to reach its objectives, because of the excessive demands they made and the incorrect approaches they adopted.
Now, President Trump has shown no interest in lifting the blockade on Iran, which he's called unbelievably successful. The U.S. has redirected 38 ships targeting Iran's main source of revenue, oil, costing Iran's economy about $500 million a day. Now, the president says the U.S. holds all the cards economically and militarily, and when Iran is ready to talk, they can negotiate directly over the phone. The president reiterating Iran cannot have a nuclear program.
It would get blown up within minutes from the time they got it. So we can't let Iran have a nuclear weapon. So this should have been done by previous presidents, and we've done a great job, and it'll come to an end very soon, and we're going to be very victorious. But they cannot have a nuclear weapon.
Meanwhile, the fragile ceasefire between Lebanon and Israel appears to be hanging by a thread. Israel and the Iran-backed militant group Hezbollah continues attacking one another. On Sunday, Hezbollah killed one Israeli soldier and wounded 6 more in Lebanon. Lebanon's health ministry says Israeli strikes killed 14 people and wounded 37 others. Bryan, the bottom line is Iran has all but said that the war resuming in Lebanon could derail any hopes of negotiations and peace with the U.S. in the war in Iran.
Maybe they should stop arming Hezbollah. That would certainly help. Thanks so much, Bryan. Former ambassador to the United Nations under President George W. Bush and United Against Nuclear Iran CEO Mark Wallace joins us now. Ambassador, the deal is we'll deal about the nuclear program later. We'll open up the strait now, and we'll just work out the other issues. We would never buy that.
Thanks, Bryan. Good to see you as always. Look, Iran's playing the same playbook that they've been playing over the last 47 years in really what's been a never-ending war and a never-ending fake negotiation. They engage in proximity negotiations. They won't even sit down usually with the United States, and then they usually cancel the negotiations. So they're playing really the same game and thinking that they can outweigh the president. You know, the president's right. We do hold all the cards militarily. Our military has performed in an incredible manner, and the blockade is truly causing grave consequence in Iran's economy. I think the only card we might not have is the press coverage of this war that tries to project that the United States is somehow weak.
The UAE is getting some help about their version of the Iron Dome right now because they think things are going to ramp up, but they want to be ready because the Gulf states will be targeted if we start fighting again. But it's hard enough dealing with Iran, but we've killed so many of their leaders. We have this issue now. According to Axios, one source said this. The foreign minister made it clear to the Pakistanis, the Egyptians and Turks and Qatari mediators over the weekend that there's no consensus inside the Iranian leadership about how to address the U.S. demands. The U.S. wants Iran to suspend uranium enrichment for at least a decade or remove its enrichment uranium from the country. So they're saying to you, we are not on the same page as an opposition to the U.S. Now what do you do?
I think that's a bit of a convenient narrative for Iran right now, Bryan. I mean, the reality is the IRGC, which is run by a man called Vahidi right now, has been in control of Iran in a very intense ideological manner for a long time now. And you see Abbas Araghchi, the foreign minister, traveling around projecting as if he's some sort of normal State Department meeting with allies. That's never been the case. And it's a propaganda tool to try to show Iran as somehow strong and equal to the United States and other countries on the world stage. I think the problem is you have a government that's run by an oligarchy of the IRGC, and they don't want peace. The moment that they have peace, it undermines this real rationale for their revolutionary theology that governs Iran and their existence.
So, okay, you're not buying into that. How about the fact that the foreign minister went to Russia right now? That's where he is. Russia, who you would think would understand that that's going to jeopardize so many things when it comes to the U.S. What are they trying to say by going to Moscow, visiting with Vladimir Putin?
I mean, that's a very typical play. The foreign ministry has never had any power in Iran. Over the many years we've been seeing these stalled negotiations back and forth. The foreign ministry has been traveling around the world acting as if they're a real power. And look, it makes sense that they went to Pakistan, Oman, and now Russia. Russia has been one of their key allies. As we know, Iran has delivered over 6,000 Shahed 136 drones to Russia that has rained on Ukraine and Europe. I think that alone should be a wake-up call to our European allies and friends and our NATO allies and friends that the power nexus between Iran and Russia is real.
So with this firepower in the area, another aircraft carrier ready to go, do we finish off the targets? Evidently, we feel we're about 10 or 15 days shy of reaching our objectives in terms of the targets. We've also been going to school on what they've been doing since. So your thoughts about where we're heading now? Should we finish the job?
I think we have to finish the job. I think that's really, really important. You and I have talked about this before, but somehow there's more discussion about deadlines. I don't know where it's been the case that deadlines are the crucial element of conducting a war. I think the president will finish the job, must finish his job, and we're on the cusp of a transformed Middle East and, frankly, global economy. Absolutely.
Gulf states, get ready. Could start again. Ambassador, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.